Cool. Thanks. Thanks, Kez. I will share my screen,
Mm-hmm.
and then okay, let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, thanks everyone for attending today. Today I'm going to talk about lessons learned on DAO creation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's the topic today. And then like Kaz said, I'll go over the presentation, and then like we can have like Q&A at the end. And like feel free to drop some questions in the chat, and then I'll just because I have the chat open, I can answer your questions at the end as well.
Mm-hmm.
So my name's Ed. So welcome to my Ed Talk. Who am I? I'm the head of partnerships at Wonderverse XYZ. I'm also part. I kind of split my time. So there's of course there's Kaz. There's also Yuki, Koya, and Yuta. So
Mm-hmm.
between all of us, we are part of Bankless Japan, where we translate a lot of content that's created by Bankless media, as well as write original content
Mm-hmm.
in Japanese, as well as English. And
Mm-hmm.
we're also aiming to organize in real life events, virtual events, and just basically looking at an opportunity to bridge the Japanese market and international market for
Mm-hmm.
Web3, whether that's helping international project get into Japan, or helping a domestic project go into international. But we want to act as the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I guess like what is a DAO? I see. Sorry, before I do that,
I
I see a question about slides. Yeah, I
yeah
can I can provide the slides after. So
yeah
yeah, so
we
so
gotta distribute this slide into the Discord channels or the Telegram. Is that okay to sharing materials?
yeah, 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 that's good. Yeah,
Sure,
I'll send you a copy of this of the slides.
sure.
Yeah,
Thanks so
certainly.
much.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so what is a DAO? A DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. So that's like what DAOs stand for.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's like an organizational structure, usually built around blockchain technology. Some people have
Mm-hmm.
described it as like a group chat with a bank account, because at the very core is communications, and some sort of like treasury.
Mm-hmm.
And then consensus, which is a major player in blockchain technology, defines it as governing bodies that operate with and also TAP they support. So I guess that's just a longer way of saying that sort of
Mm-hmm.
like group chat with bank account,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you like you want a group to make good decisions, and you also want them to make sure like they spend the money wisely to
Yeah,
continue building the project they're trying to build, right? So
right.
there are different types of DAOs.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a list of like different types of DAOs.
Right.
But it's not exhaustive. Like, of course, like there's different, like hybrids, remixes of like different one. Quick list: protocol DAOs,
Yep.
and I'll get into all these like right after. But protocol DAOs, grant DAOs, social DAOs, collector DAOs, venture investment DAOs, and media DAOs.
Mm-hmm.
So protocol DAO is one that governs a decentralized protocol. Usually that's like in DeFi, or exchanges, using a smart contract. So MakerDAO is like one of the OG protocol DAOs, because they manage like the MakerDAO project,
Mm-hmm.
where they created the DAI stablecoin. And so like using by managing this protocol, like they make it a lot easier for the lending and DeFi of
Mm-hmm.
Maker. So they're a protocol DAO. For Grant DAO, there's basically it's like the community donates funding into like this pool, and collectively like votes to like how should we allocate and distribute this pool. One example is Gitcoin, where Gitcoin, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but they do a lot of funding of public goods or projects that work towards common causes or common themes. So our project at Wonder was a sponsor of Gitcoin Funding Round 15. It was focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So basically, for that round, specifically that cause round, they raised some donations, but then like from sponsors and partners, but then they also match, like Gitcoin itself matched that funding with votes, because they leverage something called quadratic funding. Quadratic funding is just a like a more a fair way of distributing funds. So in this case, it's like in terms of matching for quadratic funding, it's actually more important for the number of people who actually contributes for matching, as opposed to the volume or the donation amount, because they want to, of course, like allocate funding to projects with more votes. Benefits. And social DAOs like preserves arts and culture for a community. Essentially, it's just a community of people, with shared value, shared interest, and coming together, whether to like network or like sort of like create an environment of like good vibes. Yeah, so like it's sort of like around like a certain set of interests and values, and even just like curating certain vibes. So friends with benefits. I'm part of FWB, and in recent time, like FWB created like their own app, so that members can connect better, communicate a little bit better, and so like anything they do is like to further that mission of like putting people closer together. One other type of DAO is the collector DAO. So Pleaser DAO acquires like high value art and just like different digital assets. And the idea of a collector DAO is that many people can put together funding or yeah, they can put together funding into a community pool where they then collect or acquire like assets that then have like shared ownership. So the idea is that then you're able to buy like digital art that you may not be able to afford if it was by yourself. And then there's venture or investment DAOs. So for these ones, they try to democratize like investing or raising money to invest in a very transparent, accessible way. One example of this is Krause House, because what they're trying to do is raise money to buy an MBA team, and so like like they have a sense of purpose of like, this is our mandate, we're trying to raise money, and this is exactly how we're going to do it. And then one last example is us actually, a media DAO. So like Bankless is content driven by community, and then reward content creators in native token. Yeah, so like at Bankless, so there's Bankless, and then there's like the different geographies, like Bankless Japan being one of them. So I guess yeah, like we get rewarded in bank tokens for creating content. But the idea is that like it's a lot of like grassroots creation of content that's then distributed to different members. So I got a question in the chat about what do I enjoy most about being FW member. I think it's just like you kind of know that because like there's an application process, that there's probably a certain vibe to the group. And so I think like because of that, like there's a higher degree of trust. And so like usually at like different events, or even if I'm traveling, like I'll post and say like, hey, like I'll be in the city. Like, is there anybody like, that's down for hanging out? And usually like I know, because they're part of FWBB, like they're probably they probably have a certain vibe to them, which is probably a vibe that like I like. And so I think that's one of the huge benefit, is like being able to like meet new friends in like different places, but that they have a certain vibe to them that is probably in line with sort of like what you're looking for. So yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like FWB. I guess yes. So like the next thing I'll do is just kind of like give you context. So I work at a project called Wonder. I'm going to blaze through these next few slides because I don't want to seem like I'm too shilly. But Wonder solves coordination problems within Web3 teams. So we're building coordination tools so that teams can work more efficiently. So in Web2, there's a lot of like centralized dedicated teams, but in Web3, there's more decentralized teams. And so like because of that, like there's coordination challenges. Wonder solves this by like a very nuanced role system to like make it super easy for projects to create roles with like very specific actions that different roles can take. One like pods or different sub teams for the overall project, and those like pods or meta DAOs like have their own like workspaces, have their own documentation, budgets, different roles, etc. So like essentially like they're different teams, but they're connected overall. There's like a seamless end-to-end coordination flow from like governance, which is like proposals and voting, to internal workflow, to external workflow, to building reputation and payments. And then also integrates with a lot of different other tools. So like we have our own like in-app voting, but we can also integrate and export votes over to Snapshot, for example. And that's kind of like what Wonder does. And overall, like we've worked with over 1,000 projects, 60,000 contributors on the platform. And just like here's just some things that we've learned at a high level. I think like in terms of like DAOs, we recognize like not everything needs to be on chain, because I think there's like this notion of like when you first start a DAO, like everything needs to be on chain, right? Because like we're Web3, like everything needs to like be formal and written on chain, and we don't think that needs to be true. I think like, for example, like voting, you don't need all the votes to be on chain, right? Like if it's just a simple like like feedback on features, that doesn't need to be on chain. But maybe something like treasury allocation, of course, like that needs to be on chain. I think the second is like decentralization is a spectrum. There's also, I think there's like this desire to become super decentralized in terms of teams. But I don't think it's a bad thing to be centralized at the beginning, because then you have like you're shaping like what your vision looks like, and then like once it has momentum, then you can start progressively decentralizing. But I don't think very decentralized at the very beginning is a good idea, because then it's kind of hard to like kickstart that momentum. I'm not saying like all projects need to do that, but like I think generally from what we've seen. I think like having more intentional role design is important, like to think more deeply about like what the different roles are for the different projects, and how they interact, and even just like how they transition. Because I think for DAOs, like there's like this, there's like sort of like three groups, right? Like there's like a core team, there's core contributor, and then there's like community members. I think like each of the roles themselves, like you might think of like how they work, but it's also helpful to think about like how they move from like community member to core contributor to core team as well, because then it kind of gives people like an idea of like how to advance or progress in their like DAO career. Accountability for members is important to make sure that people are doing doing the work that they said they would do. because like especially like because of with Wonder, what we do is like coordination and a lot of like internal workflow. So because of that, like it does help with like accountability. Like people know exactly who's working on what, when they're going to complete things, and if they need support from other people. Reputation tracking also helps identify quality contributions. So there is like the ability to like track someone's reputation as they make contributions will also help like surface like who are some of your top quality contributors. Because like if you have a very large project, there's like so many people you don't know, sort of like sometimes like who some of your quality contributors are, and reputation tracking helps that. Community engagement is also important to grow the community. So like being able to get feedback from the community, like talk to the community on a consistent basis. That's really important to grow the community, because ultimately like your DAO is just a collection of people. So you want to be able to like, have really engaged people in your team, in your project. And then like planning versus spontaneity. I think there's a lot of there's probably high correlation between decentralization and spontaneity. But I think like having some sort of like planning or framework or structure to think about like how to structure your DAO is also really important, rather than be like too spontaneous, because I think that just sets expectations by people. So I guess like, yeah, like what markets are suited for DAO creation, or really like, what are some things to keep in mind like when creating a DAO? So I think like some of the things, so I wouldn't say like, create this specific DAO, but it's more like, here's some questions, right? Like, I think the first question is like, what's the problem you're trying to solve or cause to support? Because like you like ideally like you want to hone into an area that you feel passionate about, because like even if like there's like a really hot topic right now, and you're like, hey, I'm going to create a DAO around it. But if you actually have no idea, what that topic is, and you don't feel passionate about it, then, like you're just not going to put a lot of effort or passion into it. I think the second is like, like what is the DAO's objective or long-term vision? Because like you want to be able to articulate this to like other people, and you want to like be really clear on like, what you're trying to do, and like how you go about solving it. Because I think for the third question is like, what DAOs currently exist in the space. I don't think like you need to be extremely unique. Like you can't say like, oh, there's like another DAO that focuses on like sort of like like similar to like Bankless Japan, like they do like content, translations and original content, like, oh, like we don't need to exist. But it's more like, how do you go about addressing this, and like how do you go about doing this particular thing that kind of makes you special. And so like you're always trying to find like, value proposition, or something that you can offer that maybe like another group doesn't. But even then, like I think it's okay like to have some overlap, because I think the mission of the DAO will evolve over time. So it's okay. And then I guess the final question was just, like how big can this DAO be? Thinking about like, is this DAO more for like domestic or international members? Is it more like niche, or is it like more broad? I think those are also really important questions to ask yourself, like, and when you design your DAO.
Wow.
And then I think just like more practically, like what should you do like when you start a DAO? I think like number one is like just join a DAO first. Especially like one that's in the space that you're looking to create, because like you want to get a sense of like, how DAOs in your space are run. Like what are some of the things that you liked about it? What are some of the things you didn't like about it? It kind of gives you like an insider view before you start your own. And also like if you join an existing DAO like in your space, like chances are like you can have like some partnership opportunities, and work together as well, right? Because like you're probably solving similar problems. And then similar to like what I said before, which is like, how do you define like your DAO's objective? And because like you should be able to like articulate that to your members. So that's really important. and then let the structure evolve. Because I think like what you imagine your DAO to look like on day one is going to be very different. Like let's say like a year afterwards. And so like don't feel like you're kind of stuck with a certain structure or certain mission. It is completely okay to evolve as long as you bring your community members along with you. And then finally, like I think when you start a DAO, like just like encourage people who are passionate about this particular topic to contribute, and you want to encourage like instilling a sense of passion into the work, because I think at the end of the day, like DAOs are a collection of people, and I think people are most engaged like when they're working on things they're passionate about, and so I think that's also really important. I think that's that's the end of my presentation or like prepared stuff. So we can do Q&A right now. But I'll answer. I think there's like one more question in the chat. So which was born earlier, like between Bankless Podcast and Bankless DAO. Okay, so I'm not a historian, so I may be wrong, but it should have been the podcast first, and then the Bankless DAO was created after that. And so like as part of Bankless Japan, like we're like a node within within that DAO. So like there's other like Bankless geographies, of course, like there's like Bankless Korea that we work closely with. There's like Bankless China, Bankless Brazil, etc. They all kind of operate independently, but we're all connected like through the DAO.
Wow, that's impressive. That's interesting. Wow. And thank you for presentation. And I have also question and about when it comes to the designing DAO structure, what is that worst three things should we have avoid, or what top three things should be introduced things? Do you have any ideas?
I didn't prepare a slide on that, but I think like similar to like kind of like the opposite of like what I have here, right? Like or like what I mentioned about like like things to think about like when you start a DAO. I think like one of them would be like by not having like a very clear idea of like what you're trying to solve. Or like what your DAO does and like what its objective, because like it's hard to get people to work towards a common goal like if that goal is not defined. I think like so when I say this, like I mean in general, right? Because like of course like if the DAO is more like a social DAO and you're just like vibing, that's also different, right? Like you don't specifically have to be like we need to vibe this way, right? Like there could be like certain like certain high level structure, but you don't have to be super specific about it. But I think like at the beginning, like I think you do need some sort of like idea of like what you're trying to do, what you're trying to solve. And again, like it can evolve, but like I think at the beginning you have to have some sort of idea of like what you want to do. I think like second is like if you I know I said like there is like a degree of like decentralization, but I think like if you're too centralized at the beginning, then you also might like alienate like some of your early community members. Like for example, what I mean by that is like if you're kind of like trying to figure out things for the DAO, and you're kind of like just making all the decisions by yourself without consulting like the community, without even just letting them know, then that will also alienate a lot of people, because like at the end of the day, like we join DAOs because like we want to contribute something to it. And if you feel like your voice is not heard, then you're probably just going to leave the project because you're like, well, why should I join this project? It's something similar, right? So I think that's really important. I think like also like maybe I'm biased, but because I work at Wonder, but I think like accountability and just like tracking of like work is also really important. Because like I said, like I think people think that like because DAOs are decentralized, like there's no need for like tracking or like accountability. Like, oh yeah, let's just like work on things, right? And yeah, like a lot of times like we're just contributing to a project because we feel passionate about it. but that doesn't mean that like we can't do like, you know, proper project tracking.
It sounds like just like starting startups, come up with some startup ideas. It's quite similar to what we should be
Yeah.
concerned about.
Yeah, exactly. Because like a DAO is really similar to like a startup, right? Like you're coming up with an idea and you're trying to build it. It's just like the structure is a little bit different, right? Um, oh, there's a question about like incentives for Bankless Japan members to work on various
Yeah.
tasks. Yeah, so at Bankless Japan, like we reward content contributors with the bank token, which actually does have value. And so yeah, so like if you write an article, actually I encourage you, you know, if you're interested in writing an article, you can contact Kaz, you can contact me. And yeah, like you can get rewarded in bank tokens. But I think like honestly, like for me, I think it like goes beyond sort of like just that like sort of like token incentive. It's also like, you know, being able to like, you know, work on something you're passionate about. Like I'm like really interested in the Japanese like Web3 ecosystem. And so like being able to like write content for it, being able to like, you know, talk to people, interview people about it, like gives me a lot of like joy. And so I would say like, yeah, like there's both the monetary incentive when working on DAOs, but I think more importantly, it's that sort of like intrinsic like, you know, incentive of like you feel like you're working on something passionate about, which I think is actually more important. So
Yeah. I agree with you. Yeah, it's more. Yeah, it's true that the monetary incentive is quite important, but yeah, also I feel like the same as Ed. Like I also feel like a sense of relief or sense of passion with the working with the global team like Ed or other Bankless team members, and also we can reach out to the top-notch people from Bankless DAO and opportunities to the contribute with such a kind of rare. Quite rare for us to joining such kind of part, so it's quite like improvement. For me, it's quite an improvement for my both crypto knowledges and DAO knowledges, and of course, working together with various kind of backgrounds. So it's quite it's quite kind of a incentivized me actually. Yeah, thank you so much. Or any other questions about Ed or Bankless or? So I have a question there. What brought you to joining or interested in DAOs field, Ed, personally?
yeah, that's a really good question. So so before I joined DAOs, my previous job was I was a product manager for Samsung. And yeah, like I was managing the Samsung Health and Samsung Smart Things apps for Canada. And I really liked the people I worked with. But the company is very like hierarchical. Like you can imagine, a Korean company is like super, you know, very top down, very like centralized. And decision making was like, you know, it's kind of like there's no decision making. They just tell you exactly what to do, right? And like, yeah, it was just like, it just didn't vibe with me. Like I didn't really like that. And so like I think when I left Samsung, I was kind of looking for something that was you know, like more in line with actually like with like DAOs, right? So like when I heard DAOs are like, oh, like it's meant to be more decentralized, people can make take part in discussions in decision making. It's much more flat, and you can actually work on things that you're passionate about. And I was like, yeah, like that almost sounds exactly like the opposite of that experience. And so that actually got me interested in DAOs, because I think like the because I think one of the great things about DAOs is that there's a fairly low barrier to entry. Whereas like let's say like if you're looking at like work, right? Like as in like full-time employment outside of Web3, I think like obviously like you have to apply for a job, then you know like you have to go through interviews, and then you get the job, and then you can work on whatever you're interested in. But I think with like DAOs, like the barrier to entry is like, you know, you just kind of join their Discord or you join their Telegram, and then you start participating in the community discussions. You kind of like start meeting people, and then from there, like chances are like they have like contribution opportunities for you. That's like more for community members, and then like then you kind of like just work your way up, and you know whether you turn into a full-time gig or like you know you become a core contributor. That's kind of their Discord when they first launched. And then I started chatting with the team, and I said like, hey, like I'm super interested in what you're working on. Like how do I get involved? And from there, like they just said like, oh well, you know, we kind of need help with like, you know, these things. Like, can you help with that? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And I started working on that, and eventually, like I just contributed more and more and more, and then it became like full time. Wonder is not a DAO right now, but we do have plans to become a DAO. But that journey I described is like very typical for DAOs, right? So yeah. Oh, we have a question about joining Bankless Japan. Yeah, like if you want to like contact Kaz, or you can contact me, then yeah, like we can chat about like, you know, like getting involved. So this is my TG. Yeah, so this is my TG. I can also post in like the Discord as well. And then yeah, like you can contact us and just like yeah, learn more about like how to start contributing.
Yeah. Also, the Dolphins Discord will be both of us are in there, so please feel free to contact with us. Yeah, everyone can join. Yeah. So if no other questions come up, it's about the running out of time. So it's going to be the end of the session, and this record will be uploaded on the YouTube, and this slide the Google Docs or some kind of drive, right? You will upload it.
Yep.
Okay, sure. Okay, so thanks for having time today, and thanks for presentation, Ed, for pretty much excited and interesting session about DAOs. Impressive. So thank you for having
Yeah, my
time
pleasure.
today. Yeah.
No, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for having time today, and let's get the show on the road for the Asia's first DAO together.
Super excited about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone. Thank you so
Bye.
much. See you. Bye.